Outer Wilds is a game about discovery. The game is set in a fully traversable solar system with 7 planets and a sun, and it gives you the freedom of exploring these in any order you choose. The game has no combat, no leveling system, and actually no fixed system of progression at all. The only real way to progress in Outer Wilds is through discovering information as you explore the history and mechanics of each planet, and gradually put all the puzzle pieces together to uncover the truth about the solar system. You do have this little screen in the back of your ship that tracks your progress, but the game can't be beat unless you know exactly where to go, what to bring with you, and in what order, and you can't find that information without discovering it naturally through trial and error. You can actually beat the game in under 10 minutes without any major glitches or cheeses, leaving most of the game's content entirely optional. But each of the planet's major puzzles and storylines require information you can only get from other planets, and you won't know any of this till the very end, when you find out the answer had been right under your nose the entire time. When playing, you'll realize that's true for most of this game's puzzles and obstacles, as 90% of everything useful you can discover out in space comes in the form of information, and you can complete every challenge with just the basic faculties of your ship and handheld devices. For example, on the planet Giant's Deep, which looks like a gas giant from afar but is actually made entirely of water, there are several cyclones on the surface of the ocean that you can see forming and dissipating. When you fly your ship into the water and make your way down towards the core, you'll find a strong current blocking your passage downwards, and in any other game you might think, I must need some sort of speed boost ability or scuba diving gear I can equip in order to progress further. But if you made the trip on over to the planet Brittle Hollow's Southern Observatory, you would have learned of the 2 different types of cyclones that form on the surface of Giant's Deep. The clockwise kind that launches you upwards and out of the atmosphere, but also the rare counterclockwise variant that pulls the player beneath the waters and below the current. It's only through the gathering of information that you can overcome this game's challenges, not by brute force or even simple skill, making it one of those games particularly vulnerable to spoilers. But that simplicity of its mechanics is also what makes it so interesting to play through. However, Outer Wilds' gameplay loop is a bit more complex than just traveling between planets and solving their respective puzzles. Every 22 minutes on the dot, the sun at the center of the solar system will implode upon itself and go supernova, swallowing the planets one by one and engulfing you in a violent blue ball of fire. You'll see those 22 minutes flash quickly before your eyes, and then respawn back on your home planet, having gone back in time to the beginning of the cycle once more. This is the defining mechanic of Outer Wilds, its time loop, which will become both your greatest enemy and your greatest tool, framing the game's narrative with a sense of urgency for the pursuit of knowledge in the face of the inevitable. Over the course of the 22 minutes you have before the sun explodes, the world of Outer Wilds doesn't just stay the same. If you pay attention to the 7 planets, you'll see that each of them are slowly decaying in their own unique ways. For example, on Brittle Hollow, a volcanic moon will rain down meteors upon the surface, causing the fragile crust to gradually break apart in large chunks, free-falling through the vast caverns below into the black hole at the planet's core, and out on the other side of White Hole Station in orbit near Dark Bramble. And on Ash Twin, a tornado of sand will form, connecting the planet to its counterpart Ember Twin, and it will slowly transport all the sand from Ash Twin's surface, revealing its many structures hidden underneath. Because of these time-sensitive mechanics, the game places a strong emphasis on being able to show up at the right place at the right time. This becomes the greatest part about the time loop, how it gives you virtually infinite chances to seek out your destination, as you definitely don't have enough time to see everything in one run. If you spend too much time exploring Giant's Deep, when you return to Brittle Hollow, half the planet's surface might be gone. It also explains the sleep feature you find at the bonfire on your home planet Timber Hearth, allowing you to skip to later in the loop where planets will be very different, something that will help you out in certain puzzles. Timber Hearth is one of the only planets in Outer Wilds without a system of decay or any changes in its environment, and it doesn't have much to it besides some lore about the background of the Hearthian space program you're a part of. You play as a Hearthian, and your people are obsessed with the archaeological evidence left behind by the seemingly extinct species of intelligent beings known as the Nomai. The Nomai were geniuses at space travel and technology, and remnants of their work can be seen all over the 7 planets, mostly in the form of these interactive scrolls and writings on the walls of buildings or caves beneath the surface. A lot of Outer Wilds gameplay consists of sorting through these Nomai records with your translator tool, learning about the Nomai's highly advanced tech, where they came from, and their various studies into local phenomenon or wildlife. Plus, time pauses whenever you're reading one, so it can be a valuable tool whenever you're running low on time if you need it. The Nomai are also responsible for many of the planet's slow decay, something you only gradually learn after exploring each planet thoroughly. You learn it is the Nomai who are responsible for forming the black hole within Brittle Hollow, for creating the Hourglass Twins sand tornado, and also for all your ship's technology, after the Hearthians repurposed scraps of metal and hardware they had found in Nomai crash sites. For better or for worse, the theme of discovery and how it relates to the Nomai's legacy is reflected in every aspect of Outer Wilds' story, and it's through their past discoveries and documented expeditions that you will vicariously learn all the essential information you will need to progress. The decay of planets is equally important to the game's story as discovery is, but in terms of prerequisite knowledge, a lot of what you can do with its mechanics is used strictly for optional quests. For example, the Tower of Quantum Knowledge on Brittle Hollow doesn't let you enter from the surface, and if you try, you'll find the gap between these gravity platforms is too high to make with a jetpack jump. But by paying attention and launching your scout probe at the ground until its structural stability feature reads close to 0%, you can predict when the chunk of crust the tower is on will fall into the black hole, and you can follow it through to the other side, where you can use the zero gravity of space to easily make your way up to the top of the tower. This is where you'll learn the final bit of information needed to access the Quantum Moon, which is the game's most important side quest. The only way to figure this out is through trial and error, and using the mechanics of the time loop to your advantage, maybe even going back to skip time at the bonfire back home to avoid the unnecessary wait. However, once you reach the end game of Outer Wilds, you'll find that the planets aren't the only thing that's decaying. To figure this out, you'll first need to visit the small station that's orbiting the sun, which you can only access after solving Ember and Ash Twin's main puzzle, which is one of the last things I happened to complete. While reading through the Nomai records on the sun station, you learn of their plan to fire an energy cannon from the station into the sun, causing it to explode. When I read this, I honestly felt kind of betrayed, but in literally the next room over, you learn the true intentions behind their choice. According to the Nomai who worked on the station, the sun of your solar system has reached the end of its natural lifespan and explodes under completely natural circumstances. And it was the Nomai's goal to prematurely explode the sun themselves with the stated goal of somehow sending information 22 minutes back in time over and over, allowing a chosen subject to possibly prevent the catastrophe that would soon take place. So though the Nomai contribute to the world's decay, they do it for a greater good. And if you had found the Nomai vessel hidden in Dark Bramble, the ship they initially found your solar system with, you would have learned that the universe itself is slowly decaying, and your sun's not the only one in danger. In fact, if you look around at the stars as the 22 minutes pass you by, you can see they explode one by one into supernovas too, as the universe reaches its natural end. And now with this information is when the endgame of Outer Wilds truly begins, as you try to find a way to fulfill the Nomai's ultimate goal of locating the eye of the universe. The eye of the universe is mentioned a lot in Outer Wilds, and though it doesn't appear in the solar system like the rest of the planets, it is the final destination you will need to locate to beat the game. The Nomai attempted to track it themselves countless times, and in the process found its energy reading signals dated earlier than the creation of the universe, so they saw it as the only possible way to change their fate, and dedicated their lives to finding it. They assumed it might have some way of reconstructing the universe after its inevitable collapse. To locate it yourself, however, you must first access the Ash Twin Project, which was the pinnacle of Nomai innovation and the original purpose of the Sun Station. The secret of Ash Twin itself can be found in the High Energy Lab on Ember Twin, where you learn that each of Ash Twin's towers is equipped with a warp station, and each teleports you away to a different celestial body. This is how you access the Sun Station, and also the interior of Ash Twin's core, which the Nomai hollowed out and encased in heavy metals harvested from Timber Hearth, and this is where the Ash Twin Project is located. Here you learn of the Nomai's plan to use the energy from a black hole to create a gap in space-time after finding that objects exiting a white hole will arrive slightly before entering its corresponding black hole, and how they managed to somehow bind the universe within that same cycle after adding enough energy to increase that time discrepancy to a whole 22 minutes. Take the warp core from the platform, bring it onto your ship, and set a course for Dark Bramble, where you found the crash site of the vessel. The goal is not clear. All you know at this point is that the core is in your possession, and that the vessel has a core module identical to the one on Ash Twin, which you would have noticed if you'd visited there already. But if you die while the core is in your possession, you'll see that something's different this time around. Instead of fading into black and replaying your memories once more, it will fade into this. When I first saw this, I genuinely thought for a moment that I'd seriously messed something up and I'd have to start all the way from the beginning, but luckily it lets you boot up a save point prior to removing the core. But I think this is still a really important moment and mechanic to talk about, and it's really interesting that the first death screen only shows up in the final 30 or so minutes of the endgame, coming full circle as you realize the game had a permadeath feature the entire time. Once you insert the Ash Twin warp core into the vessel's module and move the puzzle orb in the ground over to this platform, a hexagonal puzzle will rise up from the floor. Drag the orb across the ship's 6 points to form the shapes of the Eye of the Universe's coordinates, which you should have discovered back in the probe tracking module within the core of Giant's Deep, accessible only after finding the counterclockwise cyclone back in the Southern Observatory. After inputting each of the Eye's coordinates, the vessel will warp away to the Eye, where the final sequence of the game will finally begin. The end sequence of Outer Wilds is pretty detached from the rest of the game's gameplay and narrative, and it pretty much plays like one big cutscene. It takes place after the sun has exploded for the final time, and you're tasked with collecting all the different NPCs you found throughout the game, after learning that everyone is now dead. There's no happy ending, but there is closure, and there isn't really much to talk about regarding the final sequence, as it's mostly meant to be a thank you note for playing, giving you a good long chance to reminisce. The nature of this game's ending is unique, as even though you spend the entire game locked within the confines of a system of repetition, once you escape it, you leave for good, as you can never really experience it the same way again. At the end of the day, Outer Wilds is a game about fulfilling a legacy and finding truth in a dying world, but after you complete it and succeed at finding that truth, the game almost becomes obsolete, impossible to replay without forgetting all of that information. The game constantly challenges the player to seek out the truth amongst the chaos of the end of the world, but after all is said and done, all it leaves you with is a strong sense of finality and closure. This is the true essence of Outer Wilds, the acceptance of the truth that all things decay and die, and that not everything in life can be revisited for a second try. Replayability is a quality in games that's importance is hard to overstate. I think everyone can relate to the experience of finishing a game and just immediately wanting to start back at the beginning again, with that new perspective you've gained from completing it for the first time. Maybe it's to look for foreshadowing, to 100% all the achievements, or maybe you're just not done spending time with it. there's always a good reason to come back to your favorite games. This applies to other mediums too. Sometimes the foreshadowing in a TV show can reframe the entire experience in a new context and give you some of that same excitement you initially got on your first run through. With games, it's a little easier to jump back in, as each playthrough will be slightly different no matter what, especially in open world games like Elden Ring, where you can customize your builds and complete the game's objectives in a completely different order every single run. And that replayability is what makes those kinds of games so special. However, there are certain games that I've played over the years that I wonder if I can ever even boot up again. But that's the best thing about Outer Wilds, that the end is truly the end. And once you complete it, there's no going back.